Louis Cachet, born Christian Vikernes, the 11th of February 1973, better known as Varg Vikernes, Norwegian, Vr Vikes, is a Norwegian musician and writer best known for his early black metal albums and later crimes. His first 4 records, issued under the name Burzum from 1991 to 1994, made him one of the most influential figures in black metal. In 1994, he was convicted of murder and arson, and subsequently served 15 years in prison. A native of Bergen, Vikernes began playing guitar at the age of 14 and formed his first band, Kalashnikov, by 1989. After founding Burzum, he became part of the early Norwegian black metal scene. In 1992, Vikernes, along with other members of the scene, was suspected of burning down 4 Christian churches in Norway. Vikernes denied committing the assassins, though he supported them. In 1992-1993, he also recorded bass for Mayhem's debut album De Mysteries dom Satanas. In August 1993, Vikernes fatally stabbed Mayhem guitarist Euronymous during an altercation at the latter's apartment, and was arrested shortly after. In May 1994, Vikernes was convicted of first-degree murder, church arson and possession of explosives. Vikernes said the killing was self-defense and unsuccessfully argued for the charge to be reduced to voluntary manslaughter. He was sentenced to 21 years in prison, the maximum penalty under Norwegian law. During his incarceration, Vikernes launched the Norwegian Heathen Front, had 2 books published, and released 2 ambient albums as Burzum. In 2009, he was released on parole, after which he moved to France with his wife and children, where he has continued to write and make music. He was also an active video blogger on his YouTube channel Thulian Perspective, before the channel was deleted. Described by Sam Dunn as the most notorious metal musician of all time, Vikernes remains controversial for his crimes as well as his political and religious views. He promoted views which combined Odinism and esoteric Nazism, and openly embraced Nazism during the mid-late 1990s. He has since disavowed the ideology and its associated movements, although critics continue to label his views as far-right. Vikernes calls his beliefs Odilism, and advocates a pre-industrial European pagan society, opposing Christianity, Islam, Judaism, capitalism, socialism and materialism. Biography, background and childhood. In the interviews printed in the 1998 book Lords of Chaos, Vikernes discusses his background and childhood. Lords of Chaos also includes an interview with his mother, Helena Bohr. The book and a newspaper depicted there refer to her with the given name Lena, whereas Vikernes' own website uses the name Helena. In a 2004 interview, Vikernes said his mother was working in a large oil company. His father is an electronics engineer, and his older brother is a civil engineer. In the Lords of Chaos interview, Vikernes recalls that when he was 6 years old, the family moved for about a year to Baghdad, Iraq, because Vikernes' father was working for Saddam Hussein, developing a computer program. Since there were no places available in the English school in Baghdad, the young Vikernes went to an Iraqi elementary school during this time. According to his interview, Vikernes here became aware of racial matters. Corporal punishment was very common in the school, and on one occasion, Vikernes had a quarrel with a teacher and called him a monkey. But as Vikernes perceived it, the teachers didn't dare to hit me because I was white. Vikernes' mother also recalls how they spent a year in Iraq, and that the other children in his class would get slapped by their teachers, he would not. She mentions that this created problems, but generally she has no good explanation of how Varg developed his views. When asked about his father, Vikernes states that he was hysterical that his son had a swastika flag at home. Vikernes feels that his father was a hypocrite because he was worried about Vikernes being a Nazi, whereas he too was pissed about all the colored people he saw in town. About his mother, Vikernes states that she was very race-conscious in the sense that she was afraid that Vikernes was going to come home with a black girl. At the time of the 1995 Lords of Chaos interview, Vikernes still had a positive relationship with his mother but very little contact with his father. He also stated that his parents are divorced. Vikernes' father is said to have left about 10 years ago, which would have been 1985, when Vikernes was 11 or 12. The Encyclopedia of White Power and historian Nicholas Goodrick Clark have both alleged that Vikernes was part of the neo-Nazi skinhead culture as an adolescent. When asked in the Lords of Chaos interview whether he hung out with skinheads in Bergen, Vikernes said that, "There were no skinheads in Bergen." A fan of classical music as a child, Tchaikovsky in particular, Vikernes started listening to heavy metal at 12, citing Iron Maiden as his biggest inspiration. Later he discovered other metal bands whose sound would be influential on his own band, such as Creator, Sodom, Celtic Frost, Bathory, Destruction, Judas Priest, Megadeth, Slayer, Pestilence, Deicide and Von. Although Venom are widely considered the primary influence on black metal, Vikernes has always denied to be influenced by them, as well as defining the band as a joke. He once wore a t-shirt of Venom's black metal to promote the genre but stated he later regretted doing that. From an early age, Vikernes was also deeply fascinated with the fictional realm of Middle-earth created by J.R.R. Tolkien. His stage name, Grishnik, is taken from that of an orc in The Two Towers, while the band name Burzum, meaning darkness, was taken from the black speech inscribed on the One Ring in The Lord of the Rings. The inscription read, Ashnazg Derbatulik, Ashnazg Gimbatul, Ashnazg Thrakatulik a Burzum Ishi Krimpatul, or in English, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all and in the darkness bind them. Additionally, before joining the Bergen death metal band Old Funeral, he was in a band called Uruk Hai, which was named for a type of orc from Tolkien's writing. Early musical career Vikernes started playing guitar at the age of 14. When he was 17, Vikernes came into contact with members of Old Funeral. He played guitar with them during 1990-1991 and performed on their Devoured Carcass EP before he began his solo musical project, Burzum, and quickly became involved with the early Norwegian black metal scene. During 1992-1993, he recorded 4 albums as Burzum. Vikernes has stated that for the recording of these early albums he used an old Westone guitar, which he had bought in 1987 from an acquaintance. He used the cheapest bass guitar there was in his local shop and borrowed a drum kit from Old Funeral, the successor band Immortal, and another musician living nearby. On Havis Lyset Tar Os, he also borrowed Hellhammer's drum kit, the same one Hellhammer used to record the Mysteries Dom Sathanas by Mayhem. He used a PV amplifier, but for the recording of Philos FM, he used the amplifier on his brother's stereo and some old fuzz pedals. For vocals, he would use whatever microphone the sound tech handed him, but during the recording of Philos FM, he intentionally used the worst mic they had, a headset mic. On the track Dungeons of Darkness, he used the large gong at Grieghallen for background noise. Euronymous assisted him by beating his fists on it. In 1992, Vikernes joined the black metal band Mayhem, a year after band member Dead committed suicide on the 8th of April 1991. Vikernes replaced bassist Necrobutcher, who quit the band after Dead's suicide. Vikernes has distanced himself from his black metal past, claiming he came under the influence of an absolute degenerate loser, Oyston, and blaming his past actions and degeneracy on the negative influence of others in the scene. In a 2020 blog post, Vikernes wrote that he had many differences with others in the black metal scene from the beginning. They did not care for his political opinions or rifle collection, and he changed his beliefs to fit in. Arson of churches. On the 6th of June 1992, the Fantoft Stave Church, dating from the 12th century and considered architecturally significant, was burned to the ground by arson. The cover of Burzum's EP Ashes is a photograph of the destroyed church. By January 1993, arson attacks had occurred on at least 7 other major stave churches, including one on Christmas Eve of 1992. Vikernes was found guilty of several of these cases: the arson and attempted arson of a Seine church and Stortveit church in Bergen, the arson of Skold church in Vindafjord, and the arson of Holmenkollen chapel in Oslo. He was also charged with the arson of Fantoft Stave church, although the jurors found him not guilty. The judges called this an error but did not overthrow the whole case. At the time, media outlets reported that Vikernes was associated with theistic Satanism. In later interviews, Vikernes, while not accepting responsibility for the arsons, said that they were not satanic, but instead revenge for the Christian desecration of Viking graves and temples. According to Vikernes, the arsons were on the anniversary of the Lindisfarne Viking raid. Vikernes claimed that all the burnings, except for the one at Stavanger, were done by one person. Bergens Tidende article in January 1993, an article in one of Norway's biggest newspapers, Bergens Tidende, brought the black metal scene into the media spotlight. 2 friends of Vikernes interviewed him and brought the interview to the newspaper, hoping they would print it. In the anonymous interview, Count Grishnik, Vikernes, claimed to have burnt the churches and killed a man in Lillehammer. BT journalist Finn Bjorn Tonder set up a meeting with Count Grishnik with help from the friends. The journalists WER